about finding a problem that you're so passionate about that you can encourage and recruit others to join you. If you can get a high-performing team on the journey, that's how you're ultimately going to succeed.
This is built on leverage. Maria is a co-founder of Smartsheet, a cloud-based no-code platform for work management and collaboration. She spent part of her career in Microsoft and Starbucks until leaving to become the CEO of Syndio in 2018, a technology company pioneering the pay equity space. Maria has also attended the World Championships of Hyrox multiple times and won in her category.
To start us off, I wanted to ask, I was super impressed about your process to the Hyrox and the World Championships, and I would love to hear a little about that.
Oh my goodness. So my husband owned a gym in Lower Queen Anne, and it was called Accelerate Seattle. And this was post-COVID, where everyone was in their basements on their Pelotons. And so we were trying to figure out I was brainstorming with him on like how to bring folks back to the actual gym, because COVID kind of dispersed and the in-person, like actual physical spaces were really suffering. And so he found, I don't even know how, this competition called Hyrox. It was really big in Europe. In 2022, it had just sort of started coming to the US. And he said, let's go do a race. And so we went out and we did a race. It was super fun, addicting, really fun to just be competing again. And we did really well. So then he brought that to his gym and started training folks, and ended up a couple of months later going to a competition in Dallas, or maybe it was a year later. 30 of his athletes podiumed. So what started out as really a sort of business venture, a way to kind of infuse that competitive spirit and community and bring people back to the brick and mortar gym space in a business that he was running, turned out to be something that I just fell in love with and he fell in love with. And so now we compete in mixed doubles, which is you can team up men, women, 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 men, men, sort of in a doubles team, or you can do it individual. So this last year, actually in December in Vancouver, I did an individual pro race. And so you're doing it alone, you're on the heavy weights, and qualified for world championships on my own, which is exciting because I haven't done world championships on my own since 2022. Ever since then, we've gone every year, but we've gone as a mixed doubles team. So it's just a really fun way to not only keep yourself accountable to fitness goals, but having something to train for, I think for me personally is more motivating. Some people are super motivated by aesthetics or longevity or, other reasons why you're in the gym. But for me, I just missed competing and I found it to be a great outlet.
Yeah, well, it's also super nice that you kind of started with your husband. I don't know, it's kind of like also a bonding experience. So that's super good to hear.
It absolutely is. And we have so much fun with it. And when we travel, we're sort of those annoying people that no one else would want to be married to, because we like to get up and have our coffee and then go work out and then sort of wander around the city, if we're by ourselves, and then work out again. So it's been really fun for us.
Yeah, no, that's super nice to hear. I know you are a mom of like 7 kids, which wow. And you're also the CEO of Syndio. Adding on this challenge of like having another high intensity like thing to do, how do you manage everything? Like how do you make sure that like everything gets their like corresponding time?
Our family has certain rituals that I keep very sacred. So dinner, for example, really every night. And sometimes, not everyone's there. Like my son has soccer practice or my identical twin girls have cheer, but they know that every night if they're home, we are going to sit down at the table and have dinner as a family. And those are really important rituals for me. Another ritual that I have is every morning I get up super early to train. But one other thing that I do in the morning is I set the table for the little girls. So the little girls are 5 and 7. And it's really important to me that when they get up in the morning, that there's like a formality that immediately upon waking, they know that they're loved and that someone's put thoughtfulness into sort of the environment. I know it sounds really bizarre, but like I put placemats down and plates and napkins and I like set the table for them. And so breakfast has become another kind of ritual. So I think having those rituals in your family and being really consistent against them, I always say like consistency will trump extraordinariness every time.
Yeah.
Dinners are not fancy. A lot of times it's just a big vat of pasta that I put on the table, but it's consistent and they know to expect it every single night that they're home. We're going to sit down or we're going to have breakfast in the morning. And those things make up for a multitude of misses. So with my kids, I travel for work, I have a big job, but I think making sure I'm consistent with the rituals is what builds the confidence and puts sort of the pennies in the piggy bank when we have stretches where things get really crazy and chaotic.
must be very special for them too.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of dive a little back into your career.
Sure.
I kind of heard that you were in politics initially in DC, and
I was.
and you decided to kind of make this really drastic switch, like move across the country, move kind of like careers in general. And I'm really curious to hear like what made you make that decision.
Yeah. So when I graduated from college, I spent 4 months in Ireland actually working at a bed and breakfast because you could only get a work visa once for every 4 years you were a student. So that was something I had known I wanted to do, and there was this short window to do it. But then when that experience was ending, because the work visa was only 4 months long, you couldn't extend it. I was like, I have to get a job. I was a history poli-sci major. And so I found this job. This is like, again, this is, I don't know, 1998. So if you wanted to use the internet, you went to an internet cafe to use the internet. And I found this job that was basically working on congressional campaigns. And so I booked a ticket. I never went home. I went straight out to Chicago, where I found myself working on a congressional campaign actually out in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. So they promoted it as Chicago, but it was actually Kewanee, Illinois, this teeny tiny town. And I loved it. It was working on a congressional campaign for a congressman who had been in office for a while, but he had recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. So a big part of our job was educating his constituency that he could still do the job. He was still mentally up to the task. And from there, I moved to Washington, D.C. and had an internship at the Smithsonian and got a day job and a restaurant job, lots of jobs to sort of pay for everything. Because the entry level wages at that time, or really any time for someone just coming out of school, they're not a lot. And so if you want to do something and put yourself on a path, or in my case, I wanted to put myself on a certain path and trajectory. And I knew in order to do that, I was going to have to accept a lower salary. So I had always supplemented by working at restaurants at night. So that's what I did in DC too. I got a job at a marketing agency working for primarily nonprofits and lobbying groups, and it paid nothing. It was just ridiculous, but I wanted the experience. So then in the evenings, I was a waitress at this 5-star Italian restaurant. And that was really interesting too, because they had never hired a woman on the wait staff. It was sort of all men, all Europeans. You had to wear these white jackets. And because I could speak some Italian, they took a chance on me and hired me. And so honestly, 3 months in, I was making double at the restaurant what I was making in my day job. And so long story short, I kept doing that and was working in DC and having a great time. And this is sort of in parallel with the first .com boom. And I met a woman at a dinner party randomly, and dinner party makes it sound way fancier than it was. It was like, red cups and, potluck style. And she was visiting her friend, and she was visiting from the Bay Area. And she was like, you got to come out to the Bay Area. She's like, we're hiring someone in marketing right now. You'd be great. And I just kind of thought like things were on the rocks with my boyfriend. I was sort of like exhausted from working all these jobs, trying to pay my rent. And I thought that sounds like a fun, different kind of thing. So I went and interviewed for this job in Silicon Valley, and I ended up getting it. I knew nothing about tech, and I loved it. It was just this really cool intersection of a deep technical product. It was a Israeli-based company. It was hardware. It was really like technical. And my job was sort of to figure out how to bridge its product marketing. Like, how do you bridge the technical and get the messaging to the place where your salespeople can sell it? And I just found, I fell in love with it. I loved it. And from that point forward, I was on the tech journey and sort of never deterred.
After that, you also went around like a few startups and kind of went on to like found Smartsheet with like other two of your co-founders. And I'm kind of curious, how did you guys like came together? Was that idea born, and did you like decide to actually build it?
Yeah, so there was a bunch of us who worked at Onyx Software, which was a CRM company based in Bellevue. And really it came out of the notion that you would go into these meetings, and in the meetings, you would have sort of this list of things, and the whole meeting would be spent giving status updates. Everyone would go around the table and sort of give their status update. And then you'd set all these action items, you'd leave, someone would be taking notes, and you'd come back and you do the same thing every week. And it just seemed archaic and crazy. And one person in particular, the former CEO of Onyx, had tried a whole bunch of different things to try and fix this, to try and figure out how can we spend the time in meetings on things that matter? How can we spend the time trying to solve problems and being strategic versus just going through this litany of status updates? So that's really where the idea was born. And then we did the typical startup thing. I remember so fondly those early years where we just had rolls of butcher paper and we were trying to design, how would this work? How would this system work? And again, it's difficult to imagine today because today online collaboration is so common, but this was before Google Sheets. This was before anything was collaborative in terms of you'd have a spreadsheet and you would have to email that around to get updates and then mash all the updates together. So this was really transformative for its time. I remember standing behind our CTO in his office the day that he figured out how to get in an online product the rows and the columns to move, so like you could actually resize the grid. That was a big unlock for us and we were all so excited. And so it was a great early stage learning experience, and I certainly learned a ton that I now bring with me into my current CEO role.
Along that, you went into Syndio afterwards. You kind of had this passion that you discovered in like Starbucks about pay equity, and you've kind of become a leader in the space. And how do you turn that, that passion into innovation, like you have done, right? Like you're doing in your day to day?
I think it's really about finding great people. So when I was at Starbucks HQ and working in communications and really had to kind of restart my career because I had taken a bunch of time off to be at home with my little kids, and coming back was a lot more difficult than I expected, but I just sort of took that same approach of like find a crack in the door, kick it open, and work as hard as you can. And that's really what that attitude and optimism led me to the opportunity at Syndio. And I found a colleague who was the head of global employment law and knew everything there was to know about pay equity. And in our conversations, it became very clear that the way companies were approaching this was very outdated. And so it was really the ability to get him excited. And it's always about, in any sort of leadership role, it's always about recruiting and your ability to persuade someone with your passion for a vision. And having passion for a vision requires belief. And it requires optimism, I think, is the most underrated trait. And so somehow, some way, I was able to convince this guy who had been at Starbucks 13 years, was very, very high up on the ELT, working for Howard directly, that we needed to go start this company. And this was a problem that we could solve with technology. And I think to his credit, he really believed in solving the problem. He believed in the problem of pay inequity. And so he took the leap. And so we've sort of been on this journey now for 7 years, building this company, and have done a remarkable job of getting it to where it is, getting a company to, the place where we have 350 customers and we are break even. And we've got this great opportunity now in front of us with the AI transformation and an AI native product that we've recently released. So I think it's about finding a problem that you're so passionate about that you can encourage and recruit others to join you. I think that's really important. And the others that you recruit to join you are experts in their field, and they're going to be the ones that help you build the thing. Because it's never about any one person's skills or capabilities. It's always about the team. And if you can get a high-performing team on the journey, that's how you're ultimately going to succeed.
How do you choose someone to join your team? What are kind of the qualities you look for these people that will help you build the vision?
Yeah, I think the qualities change. So the qualities I looked for in the early days, the first 5 years of Syndio, are very different than the qualities now. In the early years of Syndio, it's really about domain expertise, who understands the problem we're trying to solve, who deeply understands the processes and the workflows that our customers are experiencing. That continues to be important. But then as you scale, you really have to start looking for people who have the functional experience that matches what you're trying to do next. So I think when you think about talent transformation, the most important phrase, and you hear it all the time, is, what works to get you from 0 to 10 million is not what's going to work to get you from 30 to 50 million and forward. So you just have to constantly be rethinking, number one, am I self-aware as to my own weaknesses? And am I tapping out? Am I reaching my ceiling in terms of my skills and capabilities? And reassessing and reapplying for your own role every single year. And then also thinking about that as it relates to your team. Are these folks in the right seats to get us from where we are to where we want to go versus what's worked in the past.
In a current world where technology is changing every day, and the political landscape as well, how do you kind of make sure that Syndio is always in the right track, in the right direction?
I mean, if only I could do that. It's really, it's really difficult. And I think, again, you just have to have good people around you that are constantly telling you when you could be wrong. I think rubric is the biggest risk in terms of believing your own story. And you have to have people around you that are able to show you and guide you as to how to think a little bit differently. And so I think having self-awareness of, okay, but what if we're wrong? We're making these presumptions, but what if we're wrong? That's really important. I think the other thing is being willing to make a decision and stick to it, because there's two sides to that. You have to be really open, but once you make that choice, 80% of success is just execution. And so if you can execute on an imperfect idea, but you can execute on it well, it doesn't have to be the perfect idea. So it's really about, in that decision-making process and framework, being open to identifying where you might be wrong and where you could be thinking incorrectly. But then once you commit, once you've got hands in the middle, you've got to go for it. You cannot waffle.
Kind of a similar scenario, like the one you mentioned. How do you know when, for example, you get on something and maybe that wasn't the best choice, or deciding when to let go of an idea or a project or to continue even though it's...
Yeah, I mean, we've struggled with that so much because we started out as a pay equity company and now we're continuing to stay committed to pay equity, but we have to expand the value prop for our customers and we have to help solve other problems for them. In addition to pay and equity, we also have to look at how do we help them with compliant cost reduction? How do we help them be more efficient? And sometimes it's really difficult because when you're thinking about, in Dr. Seuss terms, when you're thinking about a company, 99% of companies don't get to success on thing one. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to get over that 10 million in revenue hump. And so now, the trajectory that we're on at Syndio is we've landed thing one. We've got a great beachhead, but now we're trying to launch thing two, which is an AI native solution that expands upon the promise of thing one. And what people don't tell you is it's just as difficult to launch thing two as it is thing one. It doesn't get sort of in compounding terms. It doesn't get easier. It's the same. So I think you just have to be quite resilient and really gritty, and you have to be stuck in your commitment that you're going to do the thing, because it can get really difficult.
Yeah, it doesn't get easier.
No.
You mentioned previously, in a different interview, that you have really great investors, and also in the sense having a team with whom you can talk with. In investors specifically, how do you choose the right investors? Because I feel this is something that a lot of people get wrong, and that's something you cannot change in the future.
You have to be values aligned.
Okay.
A check is just a check. You can get a check anywhere. There's lots of checks out there. You have to find investors with whom you share values, and that is what's going to get you through the bumpy ups and downs of what a growth stage startup actually entails. So I cannot stress that enough. I have the most incredible board, and they've been with me through really great times and really, really bad times. So I think that's really important.
Okay, that's good advice. I heard that one of your favorite books is Man's Search for Meaning. And you kind of mentioned how something you took out of the book was this lesson of having something that drives you, a sense of purpose. And I'm curious if you're comfortable sharing what that is for you.
I think having a sense of purpose is critical. And I think a lot of the studies coming out on happiness wrap in things like productivity and sense of purpose. It's critical to how we feel about ourselves, and then how we feel about ourselves is how we treat others ultimately. For me, I think the sense of purpose comes from, and I say this to my kids all the time, whether we're at a picnic table or a restaurant or just out and about, leave it better than you found it. And I think that's really important. And what I am striving to do is to systemically embed consistency into the way that people are paid in a way that doesn't currently exist today. So it's bonkers to me that we spend so many of the hours in our day at work, and we don't necessarily know the trade-off we're making in terms of what are the characteristics, traits, skills that I'm trading for the compensation that I'm getting? Companies say they pay for certain things, but in practice, they actually pay very differently than what they say they pay for. And so how do we clean that up? How do we make that more consistent? The entire pay gap could be eradicated if we merely were able to align actual pay decisions with the policies that companies say they pay for. So, for example, it's not unlawful to pay people differently. You just have to be clear about, what do we value as a company? What are the things that we value? And so if we can get companies to a place where they're systemically embedding that sort of consistency, that's what's ultimately going to get us to a place where employees actually know the trade that they're making. They know what it's going to take to get to the next level. They know if a place is going to value them in a way that they're hoping.
I do agree. Like, I feel that the lack of clarity also like causes a lot of discrepancies. So that's a very good vision to have for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Someone who would love to kind of go down the career path that you have, what would you recommend, like in terms of like skill set for the young professional to like work on early on or like develop that like might help them down the road?
Yeah, everything's changing so fast. I mean, I think right now it's really about the ability to synthesize and analyze what happened in the past in order to predict and have a better sense of what's going to happen in the future. So I think, yes, you need to be able to use AI and the technologies and tools, but it's really about the way that you use them. So if you're using AI in a way that you're taking, data is the fuel for AI. So if you're leveraging it to look at a whole bunch of things that have happened in the past, and then you want to use that quick analysis as a way to create hypotheses and predictions for what may happen next, and then leverage AI as a partner in strategizing and making your perspective and point of view more crisp. I think those are the types of skills that companies are really looking for. It's, how do we find people that know how to leverage this set of technologies and tools to analyze huge amounts of information and data, whether it's transcripts from Zoom calls or notes you took in class or things that are happening in the news media or transcripts from companies' earnings calls, and put together your point of view by leveraging these technologies to have like a back pocket analyst. Those are the types of things that are going to really benefit you in terms of an early stage career.
Or like data analysis and like understanding it, like interpretation of it, sort of.
Yeah, instead of regurgitating data, how do you derive insights from all that information? And what is your unique human set of insights based on this analysis that is now at your fingertips?
As a final question, I would love to hear if you have like any advice that you would want your loved ones to follow, or like any message that you would want them to live by, which one would it be?
Oh my gosh. I think my message is quite boring, actually. It's if you invest in the things that matter consistently, you're going to have an extraordinary life. And to me, the things that matter that I want to invest in consistently are spending quality time with the people I love and really understanding them, really being present for conversations, asking them questions, getting to know them. And I think, again, it doesn't have to be perfection. It just has to be consistent presence over time will lead to exceptional relationships, and an exceptional life is built upon those relationships.
Yeah, I don't think that's like boring at all. I think that's a super nice message.
Thank you.